This afternoon, the A.J. Williams Myers African Roots Center is hosting the third annual celebration of Women's History Month, Kingston, Women in Earth with Sarah Elisabeth and Sally Bermanzohn, online via Zoom from Sally's living room. Sarah will speak on the wise woman tradition, followed by a cooking demonstration of root stew. Sally will talk about Native American women as farmers and leaders in the Eastern Woodlands and demonstrate how to make Three Sisters stew. Sarah is Wise Woman Spiral, an apothecary, consultant, edible landscaper, and teacher. She has taught at Beacon Institute and the African Roots Center and is offering online classes in 2021. She is also executive director of A Farm for All. Sarah's blog may be found on her website, wisewomanspiral.com, and she is on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram as Wise Woman Spiral. Sally earned a PhD at City University of New York and taught at Brooklyn College. She authored Through Survivor's Eyes from the 60s to the Greensboro Massacre. In retirement, Sally has written 2 novels, Indian Annie, A Grandmother's Story, and Willow's Secrets. Sally is active at the African Roots Center, Seed Song Farm, and Nitap Kitap. I am pleased to introduce Sarah Elisabeth and Sally Bermanzohn. You have to unmute.
Yes. I guess that's better. So can you hear me now? Let's hope. So we wanted to hold this cooking demonstration in the kitchen, my kitchen, but it was too small. So then we tried to set up a portable emergency stove here on the table, but decided it was too dangerous. So we're going to do a cooking demonstration showing you the ingredients and then also the final dish. I'm going to start with the Three Sisters stew. And so maybe what I ought to do is start by, well, welcome to celebrate Women's History Month in Kingston. And we're here to honor the Women's History Month and the struggle that women have been going through for all these years. The thing that I guess I want to start with before I get into the cooking part is that Native women and many tribes in the what's now the U.S. Were unusual compared to European women because their societies were not patriarchal. They weren't either. They also weren't matriarchal. They were matrilineal. And what that means is that the women, the line of from mother to child, that was the line that carried on. The children belonged to their mother and to their mother's clan. And all the women's property, personal property mainly, their home, their clothing, their tools, and the farmland that they worked on passed through the woman's line to her children, to her female children in particular. Men and women could marry easily, and they could also divorce easily. The man could just leave if he decided this relationship was over. And a woman could decide as well, and she would just put his clothes outside her house, and the man had to leave. So the basis of this was that women were the main farmers. They were the ones who took care of the land and who grew the crops. And the men also had an important role. That's why it was matrilineal, not matriarchy. It wasn't ruled by women. It was passing things down on the women's side rather than as now, as Europeans have always done, is that the children belong to the male and the property goes down through the male line. Anyway, so I wanted to just bring that in because the role of women as farmers is the basis of their power in the tribe. And so I think that's something we ought to cherish and learn from. So basically, I just want to say a few words about the land. Nobody owned the land. It was something that was for everybody who was a farmer to use, and that the tribe had lands that were shared by the whole tribe. And in particular, it was the women who controlled the land because they were the main farmers. Several times a year during planting and harvesting and clearing of land, men helped the women under the direction of the women. The women directed, they were the experts in the farming. Men had responsibilities also. They hunted during the winter because you can't grow much food during the winter. And they also were the ones responsible for defending the tribe. So one of the things that happened because of this is that indigenous people in North and South America were excellent farmers. They developed many crops that are now shared across the world. Some of those are corn, beans, squash, pumpkins, tomatoes, potatoes, sweet potatoes, green peppers, chili, garlic, peanuts, avocados, chocolate, sassafras, maple syrup, cranberries, strawberries, blueberries, and many kinds of nuts. So this is what the indigenous people of the Americas, both North and South, gave to the people of the world. And so this dish that I'm gonna just show you how to make, unfortunately not quite a cooking demonstration, but I have here the what goes into it. But first I wanna acknowledge that this recipe in particular comes from a book called The Sioux Chef Indigenous Kitchen. It's a man named Sean Sherman, who is from South Dakota, grew up on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation. And his whole thing is he's trying to teach people, indigenous and other, to eat healthy food that's connected to this land. And so all of the food that goes into this dish that I have right here, which is called a Three Sisters stew, because it's basically is corn, squash, and beans. These are dried beans that you can soak overnight. But if you really want to make this dish quickly, you also can cheat a little bit and get good old beans that are in a can, and then you don't have to soak them overnight and cook them for a long time. So then the flavoring that goes into this is the most interesting piece. This is cedar. This is a twig of cedar from my front yard, tree in my front yard, that you cook with the beans. This is a fresh piece. It gets pretty soggy and yucky after you cook it with the beans. But anyway, so they're called cedar braised beans, and they're quite delicious. And then you also cook it with a shallot or an onion. And you also add mint, sage in small amounts. And then also, what he calls for is a smoked salt. You don't have to use, you can use regular salt. And then also the best, a little maple syrup. So, and the other thing he recommends, and again, his is very elaborate and strict, but he calls for sunflower oil rather than olive oil because it's indigenous to this land. So I cooked all this up, was hoping to show you on a stove, but I agree. Not quite a great idea. But so this is the dish, the final dish. Let's see, can everybody see that? It's, you know, you can see the corn and the beans and the zucchini squash, and it's got all those herbs and little molasses and little maple syrup in it. So that is something that honors the indigenous heritage of this land. And the other thing that's really cool about it is that that the Three Sisters stew, because it's like based on corn, beans, and squash, that I wanted to speak a little bit about the corn. Corn was developed from basically from grasses, you know, thousands of years ago into the beautiful corn that we eat today, that you can, in the summer, is nice and fresh. And of course, this time of year, I use frozen corn in it, which is, that's how to get fresh corn into your Three Sisters stew. But the connection between women and corn is very strong, particularly among the Cherokees, who are part of the Eastern Woodlands down in the North Carolina, Tennessee area. And the word for woman in Cherokee is Selu. And the word for corn is also Selu. So the Selu means both corn and women. And it's a connection. And so corn is the basis of many, many traditional foods throughout the Eastern Woodlands, as well as in Southwestern tribes as well. And the green corn ceremony is the most important ritual during the summer because it's it is held when the first corn is edible, and it honors both women and corn. So many tribes grow corn, beans, and squash together. And for example, the Haudenosaunee or Iroquois, who live up in central New York, still have reservations up there and are really profound teachers. They are the ones that called the Three Sisters stew. They called it the Three Sisters, honoring corn, beans, and squash as if they are living relatives of us all. So this is part of our heritage as women. And it's also like why Women's History Month, we need to learn about the struggles of all women and also about get inspiration from the struggles and the power that Native women had in their matrilineal societies. So that's what I have to tell you about. And now Sarah Elisabeth will speak to you about the wise woman tradition. And I'm going to get this platter out of the way.
Hello, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. We got into a conversation about whether we've been doing this 4 years or 5 years. I think we settled on 4. I think we did it twice in the first year.
In Rosendale.
Yeah.
So but 3 years at African Roots.
Yeah, 3 years at African Roots Library. I'm a hugger, so very difficult not to have you all in the same room with me. It was so warm and wonderful last year when we did it at African Roots and had the food and everyone got to eat and all of that. But hopefully next year we'll be back at African Roots Library. People are getting their vaccines now, so that's very exciting. So welcome. It is almost spring, right? So we are, the full moon was February 27th. And so now we're wanting to the new moon next Saturday, March 13th. And so that's the energy of pulling back and in and down. We are definitely in the excitement of heading back out to the land. And we've all been buying seeds and our seeds are coming in and we have high anticipation for the new season to begin. But here in the waning of the moon, so the energy of spring is forward and, you're putting out and out and out this time of year. You're getting ready to get those shovels or whatever it is into the ground to get the ground moving and planting and that sort of thing. So our energy is waxing, you could say, right now. But in the midst of it, of course, we have the waning of the moon. And so we get a moment here to just pull back and in and down and reflect on our spring to come and think about last season, and all the things that we got to do or didn't get to do, and get those thoughts going again. So the wise woman tradition started with Juliet de Barclay Levy. She was from England, and she traveled the world with her 2 children, an Afghan hound and an owl. And she followed the farmers, she followed the Romani people who came out of India, who we know as the gypsies, and farmers. And so she would find an old shack, back then it wasn't squatting. These were just abandoned shacks around that you could just live in for a time before you moved on. So she brought back our herbal tradition to us. It was lost with the witch trials. Women burned at the stake. They were midwives and doulas, and they were the people that kept the communities healthy. And so we lost that tradition then. And so she brought it back to us. She lived from 1912 to 2009. And she is my teacher, Susan Weed's teacher. And that's how the wise woman tradition began. Susan Weed popularized the wise woman tradition in North America, the Western world. So Susan Weed was born in 1946. She's in Saugerties, and she's my teacher. And so I have been studying the wise woman tradition since about 2001. The wise woman tradition is worldwide now. We have Robin Rose Bennett in New Jersey. We have me. Robin Rose Bennett is Wise Woman Way. I'm Wise Woman Spiral here in New York. And then, of course, there's people all over who are bringing forth the tradition and sharing it with people. So when we talk about the indigenous people of Europe, in Spain and southern France, we had the Basque people. In Scandinavia, we had the Sami people. In Western France, we had the Bretons. In Russia, we had the Finno, the Ugric, also known as Komi, Morvins, and Nenets. In Turkey, we had the Circassians. In Greece, we had the Macedonians. In Israel, perhaps Palestinians, Canaanites, and we also had the Phoenicians. The indigenous influence into the wise woman tradition was grandmother Twilight Hurd Niche. She passed on in 2007. Her other name is Yawanode, she whose voice rides on the 4 winds. She was a Seneca grandmother, the Wolf Clan. She lived at the Cattaraugus Reservation in Gowanda, New York. There's 2 Wolf Clan reservations. The Allegheny Reservation is located in 7 towns in Cattarauga County, New York. And South Valley, Cold Spring, Great Valley, Red House, Carrollton, and Allegheny in the city of Salamanca. So she lived on the reservation. The Seneca are the original members of the 5 Nations Peace League, the Mohawk, the Onondaga, the Oneida, the Cayuga, and the Seneca. The Seneca are the philosophers of the League. All creation are the members of the one family. Mother Earth and our destiny, one family, Mother Earth, and our destiny is to reclaim that oneness. Wolf Clan teaches the wisdom, philosophy, and prophecy of Earth history. Grandmother Twilight's family has been teaching the wisdom traditions of the elders since the 1700s. She was raised by her grandparents, medicine man Moses Shango, and his wife Alice, who trained her to become the lineage holder of Seneca wisdom and leader of the Wolf Clan Teaching Lodge. Her role was prophesied before she was born and assumed after her grandfather's passing when she was 9. She was a jazz musician, singing and playing drums, and once was asked to play with Jimmy Dorsey's band. She married and had 5 children, and she opened her home to her students, which is the way that Susan Weed also teaches. She formed the Seneca Indian Historical Society, offering a home study correspondence course, councils and workshops around the world in places like Africa, Israel, Japan, the British Isles, as well as the US. She received the Living Treasures Award April 1999 for her life's work. Her son Bob is now the lineage holder of the Wolf Clan Teaching Lodge. He is president of the Seneca Indian Historical Society. His wife Lee Clark is the society's program coordinator, and they live in Jacksonville, Florida. Grandmother Twilight teaches 12 cycles of truth and the pathways of peace. Learn the truth, honor the truth, know the truth, see the truth, hear the truth, speak the truth, love the truth, serve the truth, live the truth, work the truth, share the truth, and be thankful for the truth. The pathway of peace is living in harmony with this ancient philosophy. So the indigenous people we have here on the east side of the Mohicanatuck River, which means the river that flows both ways that we all know as the Hudson River. On Long Island, we have the Shinnecock and the Pamunkey. On Manhattan Island, we have the Munsee. Upstate, we have the Algonquins, the Lenape, and the Matawan. The Munsee in Manhattan speak the Lenape language. Some of our tribes, their lands stretch down from here to Tennessee. Upstate, we have the Algonquins, and where I live in Beacon is Lenape and the Matawan. And we also have the Wappinger, which is one town up from Beacon that we know as Wappinger Falls. On the west side of the Mohicanatuck, we have the Iroquois Confederacy, as Sally said, in central New York, and that's the Haudenosaunee, that's the Mohawk, the Onondaga, the Oneida, the Cayuga, and the Seneca, as I mentioned before. We also have the Mohicans. We have the Esopus in this area, and we have the Ramapo down south on the New York, New Jersey border. Farming in history goes back to Iraq around 5000 BCE. They farmed barley, beans, and sheep. Before farming, when they didn't have enough food, prisoners of war were killed. But with the advent of agriculture and enough food, prisoners of war were enslaved, and slavery was born. Some of the unacknowledged spaces of farming in history is Africa, the Sahara Desert, 5200 BCE. They grew pearl, millet, sorghum, cowpeas. They had poor soil and limited rain. In North Africa, we have Egypt and the Nile River Valley, wheat, barley, and grapes. Some of the history of some of the vegetables that we're talking about today. So corn, the wild plants have never been found, but they were cultivated in Mexico around 7000 BCE. The beans, wild plants are found in Mexico, Guatemala, and parts of the Andes. They have been discovered in Peruvian settlements from 8000 BCE. Squash originated in the Americas, having been cultivated for 5 to 10,000 years. The name squash comes from the native word escuta squash, which means eaten raw or cooked. Tomato comes from the Andean region of North and Central South America, migrating to Central and North America along with corn more than 2,000 years ago. The name derived from the local name tomati, tomato, tomato, and tomatas. Potatoes, considered the 4th most important food crop behind wheat, corn, and rice. It was first cultivated in Chile and Peru in 5000 BCE. The name derives from batatas, which is the Carib name for the sweet potato, or papa or patata, the South American native name. Sweet potato is from Central South America 5,000 years ago. It originated between the Yucatan Peninsula of Mexico and the mouth of the Orinoco River in Venezuela. Collard greens were derived from kale. We all know the cabbage family and so many different vegetables coming out of there. Kale is one of it derives from kale, which is among the earliest cultivated brassicas, and it was grown by the Romans during the Roman Empire. The Greeks and Romans used the word coles or coulis to describe the brassicas. I am of Arawak and Carib descent. The Arawak stretched from South America to Mexico, and they were conquered by the Carib. So I've got a little bit of conflict going on in my own body as a heritage-wise. So some of the vegetables we have there is a root vegetable called dasheen, also known as taro. And it actually originated in Indonesia and the Philippines from 10,000 to 40,000 BCE. Cultivated in India for 7,000 years, and the name derived from dechin, from China. It was imported to the Caribbean through a competition created by the Royal Geographical Society to find a cheap source for the slaves. Considered a corm, a short, swollen, vertical plant stem. So they're about this big. My husband is from Martinique, and he makes a dish with codfish with it. The pineapple originated between southern Brazil and Paraguay, cultivated by the Aztecs in Mexico and the Mayas in Guatemala. So I have a keynote that I'd like to share with you. Some wild herbs that we can look for when we start heading out to our gardens. So these are indigenous. We'll start with indigenous herbs, and then we'll have a Europe section. This is amaranth. Amaranth is the wild variety is more nutritious than the cultivated variety. Really good green. I usually cook it with kale. That's the red amaranth. This is aster. The flowers have been crystallized into candy, and the leaves are good for a wild salad. Sunflower, we all know sunflower, that big head has all the seeds in it. The sunflower seeds that we know of, they're all in that big head there. And as Sally said, she's using sunflower oil. This is a relative of sunflower, the sunflower. This is sunroot, also known as Jerusalem artichoke or sunchokes, or the native people used to call it sunroot. And so this is what it looks like in September. But this time of year, we'll be digging up the root, and it's a little tuber. We all know, if everyone's seen Jerusalem artichoke before, they usually sell them in the farmers markets. And cooking it creates, Sally said she roasted it, and didn't have flatulence, but most people boil it, I think, and mash it, and that causes the winds, is what the Europeans would call it. But I've actually pickled them with apple cider vinegar, and the Native Americans use them as like radish. And I love to pickle radish, so I always pickle them. I haven't tried the roasting yet, but I think I will one day. And that's the flower up close, happens in September. Nettle, stinging nettle, really good for dried. You dry it in May, around May 15th. You want to get it before it flowers and bundle it and hang it up to dry. It takes about 6 weeks. And most drying takes 6 weeks, excuse me. And this is really good for allergies. You make an infusion. So water-based, I'll talk about preparations later. And it's really, and you can also make a nettle soup this time of year when it's early, when they're about 6 inches or so. You can, or actually no, you harvest the tops for the soup, and that helps with allergies as well. These are the herbs of Europe. This is dandelion. This is how it'll look right now when we first head out to the gardens. The leaves are really good, highly nutritious. And this is the flower. You want to harvest the flower to make dandelion wine. And it's not like your typical wine, red wine has antioxidants, but dandelion wine is a very nutritious wine. This is plantain. That's what it'll look like. Leaf, that's the leaf. And that's what it looks like in flower, which is later in the summer. The leaf can be infused in oil to be used topically for cold sores. I blend it with comfrey. You can use it for cold sores, pimples, any cuts, bee stings, all that sort of stuff. You can use the oil, or you can make a salve. I make a comfrey salve. I blend the plantain oil with the comfrey oil and mix it with beeswax, and you make a salve to use topically. And this is violet. Violet, these flowers have also been candied. The leaf is really good for the wild salad as well. Okay, stop sharing. Okay, come back to y'all. Yes. So we can talk about the categories of herbs. So we have nourishers. Those are safest and can be taken for any length of time, and they have few side effects. Things like alfalfa, borage, chickweed, nettle are all nourishers. And then we have tonifiers, which act slowly in the body and have a cumulative effect. And they build the function of organs and systems in the body. And they have some side effects, but they're short term. And you take them in small doses for an extended period. The more bitter, the less needed. That's like blackstrap molasses, burdock, comfrey, dandelion. Then we have sedatives and stimulants. Those have a rapid reaction that may be unwanted. Some parts of the person may be stressed to help other parts, and they may cause strong side effects. Reliance on them can lead to withdrawal after you stop using it. Habitual use can lead to loss of tone, and impairment of functioning, and possibly physical dependency. That's like catnip, passion flower, skullcap, valerian. And we have potentially poisonous herbs, and they're potent medicine, and they stimulate intense work on the body and the spirit. And they're taken in small amounts for as long as needed. You can't have unexpected side effects without respect for their power. And you want to look through different herbals and talk with other different herbalists when you contemplate the use. And that's like elecampane, golden seal, and poke. Some of the preparations are a decoction. Fresh herb is placed in water, which is then boiled down to half or a quarter of the original amount by slow evaporation. I've made a yellow dock decoction, really good for iron especially for women, with adding blackstrap molasses to it. Honey, you have a fresh herb filled to the brim of any size mason jar and you cover it with honey. Garlic, I make garlic honey. You can use that immediately. You can make sage honey and you use that in 6 weeks. Sage honey is good for headaches and colds. Infused oil was when I was talking about the salve, the Comfrey Salve. So you're taking fresh plant material free of moisture. You want it, so the Comfrey, I would lay it out for a day to make sure all the moisture was out of it before I put it into the jar. And then you pour on the oil and use a chopstick to poke around and make sure all the oil gets to the bottom of the jar. You don't want any air pockets in there. And you put it away. And that's for 6 weeks. And then you strain off the plant material. Comfrey particularly, you only want to do 4 weeks because it gets very stinky. And then there's infusion, that's a water base. I was talking about nettle before, it's dried nettle and it's like if you have a quart-sized jar, it's like 2 handfuls of dried herb. And then you pour on boiling water and you let it sit 4 to 6 hours. In our rush lives, it's easier to just let it steep overnight. And then you strain off the green, put it in your compost pile, and you want to drink it within 36 hours, sorry. And then there's a tincture, that's an alcohol base. The same thing, you fill the jar with whatever part of the plant material you're going to use. Oftentimes it's root, poke is root, elecampane is root, echinacea is root. And so you want to chop it up and put it in the jar and fill the jar with the alcohol. And you let that sit for 6 weeks. And they are the closest thing to prescription drugs that we know. So they have their own dosages. So whenever you endeavor, you want to make sure that you know what the dosage is. ODing is, you're not going to die, but it could be unpleasant. I have poke in particular is 1 drop an hour and up to 12 hours. And I gave it to a friend of mine and they took all 12 at once. And he had a cold and his wife couldn't enter the room for the stink. So, but he was better after the cold, after he had taken the 12 drops at once. So you just want to be careful with the dosages. And then we talked about salve. It's infused oil and you blend it with beeswax. If you want a harder salve, you add more beeswax. If you want a softer salve, you add more oil. And that's just on the stove. You melt down the beeswax and then you pour the oil in and you mix it up and you let it harden to whatever consistency you want. And you put it in your jar and off you go. And then we have vinegar, which is usually apple cider vinegar. You can use any vinegar you like, but apple cider vinegar has its own medicinal properties. And some people drink a cup a day. So it's a good vinegar to use. And so again, you fill the jar with fresh herb to the top, and then you pour on the vinegar, and that's ready in 6 weeks. And you can use that like any vinegar in your kitchen. One of my favorites is mugwort vinegar, as well as white pine vinegar. Those were my first 2 favorites. And mugwort is just really good for women, especially during menopause. And it helps to regulate menstruation. And for everyone, it's a mood, helps your mood, to tone your mood. And then white pine vinegar. White pine is vitamin C. From Twilight niche, his book, From Other Council Fires Were Here Before Ours. Together we are the promise of the worlds to come, and our mission is the same. We are here to develop our talents in order to complete our contribution of wholeness to life. Every spoke on the medicine wheel is sacred. The pathways of truth guide us to our common goal of completion, as we each stand on every spoke of the medicine wheel of life. The beauty of every lesson is invested with the eternal flame, and its secret is understanding the language of love. So my dish is root stew. I have used acorn squash, carrot, celeriac, garlic, ginger, onion, parsnip, potato, rutabaga, seaweed, sweet potato, and turnip.
Yeah.
So I just have a few of the vegetables that I used just to show you. This is acorn squash. This is parsnip. This is turnip. This is celeriac. And then I added beet this year. And so when you make the stew, it's very simple. You just want to cut into bite-sized pieces. I made this recipe up. This is, if you have a root cellar, like if you're a farmer or you're a grower and you have a root cellar, these are the kinds of things that are going to be left this time of year in your root cellar. It's grounding and yummy, delicious. And here's the finished product right here. And usually it's very exciting right now because everybody's going to eat it and love it. But
Yeah.
as
Can't
I
do that
said,
this year.
we can't do it this year. But there you have it. Root stew and the wise woman tradition. Thank you.
Can we make it get back to?
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. I was writing in the comments about, this was the last event that we did last year before the world changed.
Yes,
Yep.
that's right.
I didn't even know until I pulled out the lesson plan. I was like, did we do it last year? When we started talking about it, and I was like, we did.
And the food was absolutely delicious. And so right now I'm hungry.
I know. I'm so sad that everybody would be hungry at the end.
But we have a comment in the chat from Judy. Nettle stems are great for making cordage.
Yes.
You've done that?
They were found in, nettle has been found, discovered in Mexico 8,000 years ago. And that's what they use.
What is cordage?
Like
Rope.
Ropes.
Yeah,
Oh,
tie
okay.
stuff up.
Right. I use nettle. I do the infused and then I have the tea.
Yeah.
And then I also flavor it with a friend who makes honey, raw honeys.
Yes.
Both in the spring and the fall. It's
Yeah.
quite good.
I heat it up and eat it. Heat it up and sweeten it with honey.
Right.
Yeah.
Susan is asking, what are the seasonings in root stew?
Well, celeriac is very flavorful. It's like celery. I don't use spices at all. It's just the stew itself and the different flavors. You know, turnip is very bitter and sweet. Parsnip is kind of carroty. And you know, beet is sweet. So they just blend together, and then the seaweed is probably a strong flavor in it, and they just all blend together.
How about carrots? Are there carrots?
I have carrots in there.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Interesting. Donna says yum, which is what I had done earlier. Robin writes, my grandfather Hill identified himself as Muncie Lenape. His son, my dad, told me a story about Corn Woman and her sacrifice for the people. Sarah or Sally, have you heard of the Corn Woman story in relation to the Muncie Lenape tribe?
I've heard of it. I have a book of Seminole Indian stories that has the Corn Woman sacrifice. So I don't know if that's the same story, but it's a beautiful story of a woman who basically her body becomes corn and she feeds the village. I've heard also another one of sisters coming into a village and spending the winter there, and then they left, and all that was left of them were seeds, and that was how the people got the corn.
You know, one of the things I find interesting just in reading is how many of the traditional stories of Indigenous people almost around the world, but there are common themes.
Mm-hmm.
And just that common themes that make us understand that we all are one humanity.
Right.
You know, whether it's the Maori, you know, or it's, you know, the Cherokee here, or it's the Inuit, you know, the First Nations. I mean, it's just amazing to me. I'm sure even I've heard it from Africa, from the African continent, for example.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I think is true also across the world is the whole connection that we're related to Earth. We're related to each other, but we're also related to everything, to the water, to the trees, to the bugs, to the fish.
Yeah.
Those are all our relations. That's a common expression among Native Americans as well as other people in the world.
Yeah. In Twilight, one of Twilight's books, it's the plant family, the animal family, the rock family, the insect family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Robin added, I'm going to mispronounce it, I'm sure, Anushik. Anushik?
Anushik.
I mean, it sounds familiar. I don't know what it means, though. It might mean thank you. I'm not.
It means thank you.
Oh, it means thank you.
It's Iroquois.
Hi, Iroquois.
Thanks, Iroquois. I'm always glad when Iroquois is here.
Yeah, me too.
I didn't scroll down and see that it meant thank you. There's another.
Pronounce it for us.
Have Iroquois pronounce it for us.
Anushik.
Anushik.
And that's one way. Anushi is another. It depends on your dialect.
Anushik and Anushi. Thank you.
Okay, we have another question from Joanne. Would you eat micrograms? Is it microgreens maybe? Spring, summer only is seasonal, or winter, fall too? Seasons longer in the South. I believe Joanne means microgreens.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. My friend has a microgreens business and he grows them year round inside under lights and sells to hospitals and grocery stores and health food stores. So they can be grown, especially this time of year. A lot of people, you started.
I have them upstairs.
Yeah.
under grow light.
Yeah.
Well, this year,
they give that energy. They're wonderful.
Yeah.
I've been eating a lot of greens this winter because of the winter farm stand, the YMCA farm stand. And there's a lot of root vegetables, obviously, but also pea shoots have become my new favorite. I just put them in a bowl and pop them in my mouth.
Yeah, yeah, I get greens from him weekly.
A lot of farmers here have the high tunnels or the greenhouse long that keep the plants warm enough to grow microgreens and pea shoots and root vegetables. We belong to a winter CSA in Rosendale that I would highly recommend. It's really great getting all that good stuff every other week.
I ferment a lot of greens in the winter. So I make sauerkraut. This year, last fall, I made kimchi. And I actually have this mustard mix that I grow, and I fermented that for the first time. There was a garlic mustard, which is a wild green recipe online. So I used the same recipe to ferment these mustard greens. Sally and I had it last week. It was pretty good.
Very good.
And I also make pesto. with parsley. I make parsley pesto and freeze that stuff.
I make pesto with any green,
Yeah.
quite frankly. Now there's another from Susan, another Susan. What is your favorite spring plant for cooking and what dish do you make with it?
Spring plants. I eat wild salad from
Yeah, I think
April
that's
to
it.
June.
So
I
you can have a lot of different
yeah,
things
so
in
I
that.
harvest wild chickweed, garlic mustard, violet, dandelion, and I just make fresh salads with it. I don't cook later on when the dandelion gets big. I make a dandelion soup like around June or so when the greens are really big and you can get a lot. I make a dandelion soup.
Okay, Robin is asking how long and what temperature should the stews boil? Do they boil or simmer?
Simmer. I let it boil and then I turn it down. Everybody's stove is different, but I turn it down to 2, which is like the third. I think there's low 1 and 2 on mine. And then I let it simmer for 2 hours.
What about yours, Sally?
Well, the Three Sisters stew, I mean, the beans are the one that take the longest, especially if you use dry beans and you have to soak them overnight and then boil them for at least an hour. Simmer them. I agree with that. And then I cook the other things separately. I start with onions or scallions and cut up that and cook it in a little bit of oil and then add the zucchini squash and cook that for just like 5 minutes and then add the corn, either frozen or fresh corn and the spice and then mix them all together. Mix them together with the beans that have been cooking in a different pot. I was going to do all that here.
Yes,
but I think probably I would have spilled it all over the place.
well, you know what happens is that when we were talking about this before the presentation, when we were doing the tech rehearsal, and I said, when people do cooking shows, they make it look so effortless, but there's like 1,000 people helping them, including 2 people who are usually on the floor behind the whatever cooktop they're using, who are handing them things, handing the chef things and everything. They're off camera, they're out of sight, but they're scurrying around and doing all sorts of things.
And it looks so easy.
Yeah,
right, it does.
But they also have basically the stove is a flat surface, so you can watch. So if we were in my kitchen, you'd see our backs because the stove, and there's no room to put, it's very small. So it's anyway.
And we couldn't
Absolutely.
Get the refrigerator out of the shot.
Yeah.
Donna writes, there seem to be 2 worlds of bean prep, those who soak and those who do not. I do either, depending on how much time I have. But anyway, any comments? I have done them both ways.
Well, the only way to not soak is to get them in this way.
But in terms of preference.
Well, I can't imagine not soaking them.
No.
What?
Okay, maybe I misunderstood. Those who soak and those who do not.
Yeah, I've done both.
How do you not soak? How do you cook? They're so hard.
How long do you cook after you soak them? How long do you cook them?
About an hour.
Yeah, so I would cook them for like 2 hours.
Without soaking.
Without soaking.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Donna's saying you can cook them without soaking. They are fine.
Yeah.
And we used to, now you can do it like in the Instapot if you have one.
Yeah. I have the long-term pot, the old pot.
It says, Joanne writes, Google. I love the way that Google's become a verb. right up there with we summer in Nantucket. Anyway, Google Dina Falcone. She has foraging videos free. Get on her mailing list. Also excellent book.
Yes,
Yes.
she is. She's excellent. I love her her cookbook, her wild greens cookbook. I have that. It's very good.
From Robin, Sally, and Sarah, did you have recipes that you liked that were handed down in your family that you would like to share?
I made curry goat a few weeks ago. I buy a goat leg for the winter. I grew up, it's from India, but the Indian folks from India were brought to the Caribbean as indentured servants, I believe, right directly after slavery. So they brought all their wonderful spices with them. So I grew up on curry. So I made curry goat a couple weeks ago.
Cool.
Yeah, my father-in-law is from Barbados. Curried goat, love it.
Yeah.
Can you get a goat leg around here? I keep thinking that I can't do it because I have to go all the way to Brooklyn.
Right. That's where I've had it. Right. In Brooklyn.
There's a halal place in Wappinger Falls that I get the leg from.
Oh,
There's
okay.
actually a lot of goat farms in Orange County, I believe, as well, who sell it for meat.
Interesting.
So my mother was Southern, and she was very into frozen foods. I mean, you know, just because it was so quick and she was a working woman. But the one thing that I do remember her was bean dishes, soaking the beans and cooking the beans, which has become a favorite of mine. And I did get that from her. So.
And my husband's favorite dish to make is pigeon peas with codfish and the dasheen that I was talking about before. And he soaks the pigeon peas overnight. Yeah.
Now, the codfish recipe I got from growing up, and we didn't have recipes and there was no cooking classes. It was just all visual rehearsal. But the one is, it was salted cod with tomatoes.
Yeah.
And, you know, in the cast iron pan. My mother was like cast iron woman.
Yeah.
Should be a, you know, I don't know, a country song or something. But anyway, but it was absolutely delicious. But you cooked it forever and you didn't put anything else but black peppercorn in it.
Yep, that's what my husband does. My dad cooked like that as well when I was a kid. Yeah, he made
That's interesting.
It was like a salad. His was cold. My dad's was cold. I guess he just boiled it and then just threw in tomato and stuff like that. So it was like a cold dish for like breakfast.
Right. Donna notes, not Insta in my house. Well, I only recently during COVID got the Insta because I'm on Zoom calls for so long and I like to cook. So sometimes I do Insta at 7 o'clock at night, so I'm not eating at midnight. You know.
Yeah.
Good idea.
Anyway, that's just an excuse, I know.
It all depends on what time you have, because we're all rushing these days. So gotta do what you gotta do.
When COVID started, everybody kind of thought that life would slow down, and for some reason it didn't. It got even more intense, and because we're doing virtual environment meetings, there's no even accounting for travel time. Before it used to be, well, I'm in a meeting from 2 to 3. So, you know, you can't have a meeting at 3 o'clock because you got to get from point A to point B. Right. That's not true anymore.
Yeah, my friend works in corporate America and she's got more meetings, more work, you know, because she's at home, you know, and so it's just, she's 12 hours some days. She's like, this is insane. You know, it got worse, you know.
Donna, thank you, Donna. She wrote, Troy Ellen, I am jealous. I'm not sure what you're jealous of, but thank you. Yes, we need, Rev Deli writes, we need to petition folks for breathing time. Well, I've started, a lot of us have started, particularly in the Emergency Food Collaborative, we've started ending the meetings at 10 of. you know, or at 20 after, so that people have time to get a glass of water, take a bio break. You know, the other thing that I find is people will, I've done it, I turn off my video so that I can stretch during the meeting,
Yeah.
you know? And I think that self-care is important. We're all humans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If folks want now, why don't they put their cameras back on so we can see some people?
Yes. Here we are.
There you go. Hi. At least we can see some faces.
Oh, there's Susan. Hey, Susan.
Hi.
Hi.
That's great.
Hey,
Hi.
Deb.
Hi, Deli. Hi. Oh, hi, Mama. Oh, it's so nice to see her.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is great.
Right.
Starting to feel warm now.
Yeah.
Hi, Kelly, how are you?
I'm blessed. How you be?
And you're with your mom, is that right?
Yeah, we were trying to do this on the big. I brought.
Oh, you're freezing.
Yeah.
Over my computer so we could do the big screen. The computer decides it wants to up. Oh, can you see it now? Am I talking?
Yeah, we.
My computer decided it wanted to force me to update. Can you hear me?
Uh-oh.
Right
Yeah.
before you were setting up.
Yeah, that's a drag.
Yeah, and so you know, so it says, "Oh, we'll be done in 45 minutes." I'm like, ah.
Well, say
So
hi to your mom, because I remember her at Seed
Yeah,
Soft
yeah. Well, she can see you. It's just that we're on the phone, and you know, it's like I can't do this. I just there we go.
Great. Great.
Yeah,
This is all going to be very folksy when it goes on to
yeah. I
you.
wanted to make sure she saw you guys.
Hey, Judy.
Donna Schlockman wrote, the wonderful thing about the soup stews you have shared is that you can make a lot and eat off them all week.
Yes, that's right.
I have a
That's
big,
right.
I have a
That's
big
right.
container at home still. I only brought half of what I actually made. I froze some of it.
Yep, that's right.
I make big dishes all winter long.
Yeah.
Lentil soup, split pea, it's always a giant pot, and then half of it's always frozen, so that you just keep pulling it out, you know, and having it through the winter.
Joanne writes, our community center, Red Hook, made Irish soda bread as a group project a few years ago. It was like quilting, very relaxing, and everybody connected. Women, kids, men, we all have food in common. Thank you.
Oh, that's great. That's nice.
I had an Irish soda bread recipe in my early 20s. We all shared it. We had it going in a start for like a year. Everybody was just sharing the starter and making it.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Let's see. Oh, sorry. I lost the chat for a minute. Oh, I'm making Irish soda bread muffins now.
Oh, I can taste it. I can smell it.
Nice. So any other questions?
I'm hungry.
Yeah, I'm definitely hungry, that's for sure. Any final thoughts, Sarah and Sally? Oh, wait, Donna has said, my first bread making experience was with a group of women in a big church kitchen. So wonderful.
That's nice.
That's awesome.
Well, I just can't wait till we can all be together in person. I really just am hungry for that.
Yeah, this is a pretty cool event at the African Roots Library. We always love it. We come out of it just so warm and just like ready for the season. We're like, yeah.
And well fed.
Well fed. By the time I get back to the table, everything's gone.
Anyway, so we hope to see everybody maybe between now and then, maybe on Zoom, hopefully in person.
Yeah. Thank you.
One thing I'll announce that we, at a NETOP KETOP steering meeting we recently had, we decided to have, we're planning on having the summer solstice as a big event open to people to come, you know.
Yeah.
Hopefully everybody will get vaccinated if possible, and
Yeah.
we'll be able to be normal human beings again. So
And what date is the summer solstice again?
it's
The 20th.
June 20th
Yeah.
or 21st. I could look it up, but right now
Yeah.
I don't have it in front of me. But we'll put out, put out messages about it. We got, more than 3 months, and hopefully we'll be able to do that
Yeah.
after a year of not being able to do anything.
Yeah.
I know it's coming up on March 13th.
Yeah.
That was sort of, that was the change, but
And we did ours on March 7th.
right.
Did it.
Last year.
And Leah Penniman was supposed to be 250 people at the
Right.
YMCA on March
No,
13th, and
I
we
was
went,
gonna-
yeah, no, we're not putting 250 people together in one room. But it was very successful because with the support of Radio Kingston, we did it Zoom on Facebook Live. So we were still able to have the program.
Yeah, that
That's
was great.
awesome.
That was great.
And
Yeah.
that was fabulous. But one thing I will say, I think has come out of this, at least in the work that I'm doing in the Kingston community, I think this community is more connected than it has ever been in terms of supporting community and mutual aid and reaching out to people and caring about one another, because we all face the same. I mean, it's not 100%, nothing ever is, but we've all faced the same thing and have come together much, much stronger as a result of that.
And
Yeah.
Troyelle and I am just so happy and grateful to you, because you've played such a good role in all of that.
Yeah.
Well, I had to do something. You know, I came home on March 14th, sat in this chair, and I've been in this chair ever since. But thank you so much with that. I really appreciate that, Sally. I want to thank all of our guests today. I really appreciate you coming and spending time with us. We have another program coming up on March 20th at 4 p.m. Why can't I remember? Sorry, senior moment. Anyway, it'll be up on the website soon, and we'll be promoting it via the usual channels: Facebook, local libraries, online media properties, etc. And so look for it. 2 weeks from now, March 20th, and the presenter, it's again a Women's History Month program, but it's being presented by Ethan Scott Barnett, who is born and raised in the Hudson Valley, a long-time association with the African Roots Center, and joined the board last year of the African Roots Center. So it's going to be good.
Yep, he's good. He's good.
And sorry for I should have written down the name of it. I thought I'd remember, but you know, it happens. Anyway, thank you all so very much. Very much, Sally, Sarah, and all of our guests. Thank you for a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you.